Hello, all you moms and dads out there, the teachers, professionals, therapists, all of you. This is a topic of discussion when we are talking about the perfect storm and the challenges that we're seeing in all of our kids today. I mean, it could be everything from temper tantrums. We've heard of the terrible twos, and now it's becoming the terrible threes, and so on and so forth, and anxiety and ADHD and sensory processing disorder and autism. These are all an accumulation of challenges known as the perfect storm, and they arrive from several different factors that can accumulate over time. Now, your kiddo could have all of these, they could have some of these, and that's why some of the symptoms or the challenges may appear everywhere from mild or occasional to this is your everyday life. We're talking just the burden and the challenge of getting your teeth to brush their teeth, getting ready for school, the tags are itchy, they won't get in their uniform or whatnot, and it becomes this constant struggle. The day-to-day stuff, the little things, are actually the big things, and it has completely thrown our family dynamic off track. And typically we do this, what we're doing for the webinar today, it's typically over an hour long in a live presentation, but for the purposes of time and with it being virtual, we wanted to highlight the high points. So we know, how do we get here? What are we looking for? And more importantly, what you can do to help get your kid out of this perfect neurological storm. So I'm going to be referencing some notes. Again, I won't be going into our full presentation and sharing slides and videos. It would make this a lot longer, and we want to be respectful of time, especially as this is spring break time. And what a better time to be presenting this information when kids are going to be coming off of a transition, which can be very difficult for many. So I want to help connect the dots. And for some, it can start as early as having fertility challenges, trouble getting pregnant, the stress that goes into it, maybe seeing a fertility specialist, maybe going through rounds of IUI or IVF, and just the constant stress and fight or flight mode that accompanies all of this. Or if you've had multiple miscarriages and just, when you do get pregnant, you are going to be cautiously optimistic throughout the whole time. And you and baby are sharing stress hormones through that second trimester before baby can actually manufacture their own stress hormones. And the one thing that we do know is the longer we are stuck in a cycle of stress, it wires this baby's nervous system before they've even entered the world. And there's so much that's going on developmentally during those 9 months. And it does carry over once they are earthside, and we can see a variety of challenges. So we look at first trimester stress, second trimester, third trimester, and then we get to the point of labor and delivery. And sometimes things, have to go in a certain direction, maybe not how you planned, or it didn't, maybe birth didn't go as according to your birth plan. So we may see an increase in interventions. There could have been an emergency C-section. There could have been breech malpositioning. There could have been interventions, epidural, forceps, vacuum, all of these things. And we know that it really lays a tremendous amount of physical stress on this tiny child's nervous system. And so just being born, it's tough. It's stressful on both mom and baby. We take all of this into account because we know that these challenges don't begin when the symptoms start, when the behaviors start, when the meltdowns start. This has been accumulating over time, and they don't tend to grow out of these things, but rather they grow into other challenges because this vicious cycle needs a pattern interrupt, and it doesn't have a way to break through on its own. And that's where we enter as pediatric prenatal family chiropractors. I'm Dr. Michelle Doherty. I've been a pediatric chiropractor for 14 years. And so what I'm hoping to get across to you parents and providers tonight is just a better understanding of how this stress becomes stuck on, how it tends to present in our kids, and again, how we can all work together for the same common goal. We want our kids to be happy and healthy and thrive and be successful. It doesn't matter if it's in school, in sports, in social interactions, and we just want them to become confident grown-ups in the world, no matter if there's a pandemic or not. The real thing comes down to adaptability. And if you've been wired for stress, you're not going to adapt as well. And we see this time and time again. Think to your children now. Once they were born, were they an easy baby? Were they a very stressed, colicky, arching, stiff baby? Did they have gut issues? Were they very refluxy? Was their plumbing off? Were they not pooping? Were they having recurring drainage issues with a lot of ear infections? Did we have a lot of croup and RSV? So thinking about it, is it difficult when they're teething or get a little cold? Does it tend to drag out? These are signs of a stress and stuck system. So then when we enter into toddlerhood, were there delays when it comes to crawling and walking and speech? These are all stepping stones. These are signs of neural development. And if we skip stages altogether, or they're greatly delayed for whatever reason, then it becomes much harder to get to the next stage. And then once we have kids that are entering into school, we may find that they're super fidgety. They're uncomfortable in their own skin. Their minds and bodies are going like a million miles an hour. They may have trouble focusing and just calming down at the end of the day. So we may see some sensory issues. They may just be more sensitive, like sensory averse or sensory seeking. So you may notice that. And so what I wanted to do was break down the stress patterns, just making sure we have things from infancy to babies, to immune, to development toddlers, breaking down the different age groups. So as I mentioned, in infancy, the biggest thing that they should be doing is eating, sleeping, and pooping. So if there's any challenge in that arena, and this includes like latching issues, or some of the soft neurological signs that we'll see is maybe they tend to favor turning their head to one side, or they prefer nursing to one side. These are all telltale signs. They're tiny in nature and it's easy to brush off, but it is one of the first signs as parents to know that we should definitely investigate a little bit further. With babies, when we see physical stress on their nervous system, maybe due to the birthing process or whatnot, sometimes we can see some torticollis or plagiocephaly. So we have like flattening in parts of the skull, which is important because the brain develops from the bottom up and from backwards forwards. And if we start to see that, it becomes more than just an aesthetic issue, but it can actually compromise some of their growth and development. As I mentioned, the poor plumbing, whether it's up top here or down below, and this will morph into some immune challenges. We could have chronically sick kids, and it could just be mild, but it's ongoing. And everything from RSV to chronic congestion to ear infections, the colds, and so on. So we know that when it comes to development, so that first year of life, we are looking for things such as if they appear to have a strong neck, like they're holding their head up at a couple weeks old, this is a rigid, stress stuck on nervous system. They are supposed to be completely in that calming side of the nervous system. We have stress mode and calm mode. And especially in that first year of life, they shouldn't be stressed. They should be like this floppy burrito that just kind of melts into you and sleeps for their naps during the day and having adequate sleep at night. And rolling over. If they're rolling over way too early, that's another telltale sign. It looks like they're these fast achievers. And instead, it's not even them consciously doing these motions. It's just more random than anything else. So it becomes unpredictable. Crawling, if we see army crawling or they're walking on their hands and feet versus doing a proper cross crawl pattern. So again, we know that those connections up top, they may be getting some fuzzy communication. So another thing that we need to pay attention to, let's say they skip the crawling stage altogether, or they're walking way early. We see that when that stress takes hold, they become very fight or flight, gas pedal, fast paced kiddos, very fast paced. So we know in order to keep up with that, we need to keep them busy. They do better when they get a lot of playing and running and outside time to calm some of the noise that's happening inside. Otherwise, it will tend to appear as bad behavior or inattention and things like that. And we know movement is so important when it comes to growth and development in our kids, especially little boys. And then we go into toddlerhood. So ages 1 to 3, this is where we tend to see continued immune challenges with ear infections, with sleep. They may have difficulty falling asleep or they're unable to stay asleep, which means the whole household is up, and it makes for just zombie parents and just a stressed household, and it becomes difficult with the day-to-day things. Digestive challenges, stomach aches, constipation, these are all big things. We go into 4 to 6 year olds, so right before they're starting actual school, or maybe more the preschool kindergarten years. um, we see more of that hyperactivity and go, go, go. And it, of course, when we have more hyperactivity, guess what? We're not going to calm down. We're not going to get off the furniture. We're not going to stop slapping our siblings. Like, it's just, we feel the need just to release without, you know, thinking about consequences or anything like that. Then we get into more of the school age. So the 8 to 10 year olds, more of our elementary school, this is where anxiety starts to creep up, whether it's outwardly where they are fully showing anxiety and wanting to not be part of situations, or if they start complaining of tummy aches, that is a sign of anxiety. Continued sleep issues, then we start getting behavioral issues, more meltdowns, just difficulty with transitions, no matter what it is for school or coming off the holidays. And then we get into our preteens and our teenagers, our 12 to 15-year-olds. We start to see some emotional dysregulation, lashing out, bursts of rage. Then we have enter hormones and puberty. So that's always fun to deal with some of these changes when we throw that piece of the puzzle into an already wired for stress kid, and they have so much trouble with that regulating. And we start to see patterns, behavioral patterns that are creeping up, and maybe they are starting to not do the things that they would typically do, enter in later teenage years, where when they've been so go, go, go for so long, they don't have much left in the tank. Then they start going down into the lows, lower energy, lower interest in things. They may fall into depression. Motivation can become a big issue. It could be even harder and harder to peel them out of bed to get them to school. Overall, just low energy. And you're like, what happened to my kid? And then you start to feel like a failure as a parent. And just please know that wherever your kid is right now, I'm sure it's not due to a lack of parental effort. Some of you have already gone through the route of fixing and cleaning up nutrition and a chemical-free environment. Maybe you've done the speech therapy, the occupational therapy, the physical therapy, all of the different things. And maybe you've gotten to a point, and these things are great. We know that they can work even better when the master controlling and coordinating system of your entire body is online and fully online, so that it can communicate with the gut better. It can communicate with the immune system better. It can communicate with the hormonal system. So we have to look at things in chunks and in stages, and we can't go forward unless we take a look back. And that's one of the most important things as pediatric chiropractors. We have to look at the whole story, And we know that no two kids are alike. So when we are putting game plans for your kid, it's specific for them. So as the stress stays in their system longer and longer, it escalates in those behaviors and those outputs. And we know that the earlier these stressors happen, the more chronic they are and the more abundant. So the quantity and the chronicity, we know it takes longer to unravel and unwind. And one of the ways that we do that, of course, chiropractic. I am a chiropractor presenting on this, and I'm truly grateful for the opportunity to be able to, myself and my team, to be able to work with these families to just help them navigate, help guide them and their kids, through growth and development. Because absolutely one of the things that gets activated during a chiropractic adjustment is the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is one of my favorites, but it is one of the most far reaching nerves in our entire body, and it regulates a lot of the autonomic nervous system, the stuff happening in the background automatically. So it exits out of the brainstem and then it passes through the cardiac area, the upper GI, and into the lower GI, which is why when we have kids that are having difficulties with their digestion, with their immune system, with their behavioral system, it's basically like pumping the brakes. Think of activating the vagus nerve as pumping the brakes for your kid. And the vagus nerve, it's involved in a lot of social, emotional, speech and communication, sensory regulation, just that calming and relaxing. It just helps to slow things down. And we know that if the vagus nerve is online, your body is going to get you through sicknesses easier. It's not to say you're never going to get sick, but it is telling us that your body will adapt and will show up when you need it to. So how do we do this? Well, first off, after we are getting a lot of the history for your child, we do neurological scans. We're a very neurologically based office. We know it takes time and repetition to unwind these patterns that have been stuck on for however long. And when we do the scanning technology, there's 3 different scans that we utilize in our office. One is looking at the function of your autonomic nervous system. So again, all the behind the scenes stuff from digestion to hormones to, how stress can be affecting the overall big picture. We also look at how much energy output is it taking for your kid just to be in a neutral, relaxed state. So often we find that they're going a million miles an hour and getting nowhere fast. So that's important to see because we have different categories when we have these perfect storm kiddos, no matter what their challenges were at any stage of growth and development. And um, excuse me. And along with that, we have to know how to shift forward. And so the final thing, the final scan that we look at is our heart rate variability. There's a ton of research on that. It's great to know baseline where they're starting from. What are they more in fight or flight mode? Is their issue a lot more chronic? Do they even have the energy reserves to be able to adapt to changes? Changes could be changes in weather. It could just be changes in the school schedule. It can be pandemic or not pandemic. It could be changes in anything, welcoming a new sibling. These are all transitions. And if we don't have the reserves, it's going to be a heck of a time to be able to navigate and adapt to whatever life is throwing their way. Because the key here, parents, is we live our lives through our nervous systems. And what I mean by that is we have your typical 5 senses, touch, smell, taste, sight, hearing, all of that. But then we also have balance and we have proprioception. Proprioception is how your body knows where it is in space. And we have different ways to be able to interpret that information. And the most receptor rich area for this is in the neck, that upper neck area in particular. And this is also where the vagus nerve is. So if we have abnormal movements and we've had, let's say, a stressful birth, even just to give one example, it's going to affect how the brain is going to process the information from its environment and to organize and coordinate that information. So then it does the best it can and gives communication back out. And it may not be what we as parents would want to see. So we start to try to navigate, how do we correct the symptoms, the behaviors that we're seeing, when instead it's an input issue and we have to start from there. And don't get me wrong, nutrition, all of these therapies, we love working with providers. They love working with us because when the nervous system is working as efficiently as it can, these other therapies can take hold and ingrain into their nervous system so much better. And that's what we want, is to be able to work with you, with your providers, to give your kids the best and healthiest outcomes. If this sounds like you or your kid, we urge you just to give us a call, just connect with us to see if what we do can actually help your kid. And we make it really easy. The scheduling is very flexible, and we understand that sometimes it can get a little crazy and it may prevent you from wanting to come into the office for this 1 hour long appointment to go through the history and get scanned. So often, what we'll do is we'll do more of a virtual or a phone consult ahead of time. So then all we need to do is get your kiddo scanned, connect with them, examine them. And it makes for an easy introduction into our office, but also making sure we're meeting your kid where they're at, because sometimes doing different things and being in an unfamiliar space, it can be scary for them and they may shut down. And so we do acknowledge that and we take that into consideration. But if anything else, if you ever have an opportunity to attend a live webinar, or excuse me, um, a live event where we're presenting this information in full and really digging into the science, I would urge you to come. But if you are feeling stressed and just stuck and not really sure where else to go, and you've maybe have plateaued with other therapies, then I would encourage you to reach out and get your child scan and see how chiropractic can help you along in this journey. I hope to see you soon. Take care, parents.